Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to WCS Winter. We are back with Group C today for both Europe and Americas. My name is Fear Dragon. I am joined here on the desk by Zombie Grub first thing in the morning. How you doing?
It's early, but I'm doing pretty well. Thank you.
I feel like we've gotten used to the sleep schedule at this point, though.
That's a lie.
Well, I don't know about you, but I got 12 hours of sleep, so.
I got a ton of sleep, and yet I still woke up at 5 in the morning. Was like, well, I don't know, like, should I just go back to sleep? No.
Yeah. Bodies suck. But you know what doesn't suck? This event, because if you aren't familiar, it has a super cool format. 32 players managed to qualify for WCS Winter, and we are currently in Group Stage 2. That means that there are 16 players left, not including the players that have already been knocked out yesterday and the day before. And 8 of these players are going to make it to the next stage, which will be a round robin, which then leads into a top 6 offline playoffs, which is in a King of the Hill style format. I always say it's the King of the Hill style format, and then I see people saying like, oh, King of the Hill is not a good format, blah, blah. The caveat there is that it's King of the Hill, but it's all seeded by how you do on the round robin. So everyone earns their spot in how far along that King of the Hill they end up.
Yeah, it sounds actually really awesome, and I hope that when you guys see it in action, then you'll be convinced that it is cool.
Absolutely. And of course, this is for a pretty awesome prize pool as well. $60,000 for Europe and Americas, each one of them getting $60K, totaling up to $120,000 on the line for WCS Winter. $12,000 of first place for each one of the respective regions, and any of the players that get knocked out around here earn about $975.
Yeah. Nice chunk of change, even for getting dropped out 4th.
Yeah, earning a grand for getting knocked out in this group stage, definitely not too bad.
Yeah. Of course, they had to make it to the last group stage, too.
They did. And of course, the last group stage, we saw some really cool matches in the last group stage, a lot of good players, and a couple of upsets. And we've already seen some upsets here in the round of 16, so I'm looking forward to seeing how today's matches are going to go, because we look at today's players and we see a lot of Protoss here. We got ShoWTime, we got DnS, we got Hellraiser, and then we also have a Laser, the lone Zerg in this group.
Yeah, he's like, what should I practice for my upcoming matches? ZVT? No. ZVZ? Nah.
I wonder if he's built a Nidus worm or two, Zombie Group.
You think so?
I think a Laser is the kind of person who will have built a Nidus worm or two.
He did tweet out that he's hoping to show what he's been practicing. I think was the gist, so.
Well, it's going to be a treat to find out exactly what he has been practicing, what he's going to be showing us. But before that, we're going to go into some Protoss versus Protoss. So far, I've really enjoyed all the Protoss versus Protoss we've seen in the round of 16. They've all been kind of wonky games, I would say, for the most part, especially a lot of them from North America. But we now move into the European Protoss versus Protoss. So ShoWTime versus DnS. What are your thoughts on this one?
Well, I think it'll be more of a basic PvP than the previous 2 days. I'm actually like calling that right here right now. I mean,
you think ShoWTime's gonna play normal? Zombie, what are you thinking?
I'm just crazy. I don't know what I'm on about. But it is PvP, and so we cannot take away the matchup, right? Like, even if someone's super standard macro playing TVT, there's always a chance that they 2-racks. There's always a chance that they 1-base it. Same for PvP. There's always a chance that someone throws down a proxy pylon, as this matchup, I think, for the players themselves also gets frustrating and weird. So.
That's very fair. So again, this first match, just the first match, so if you are not familiar with these groups or you somehow missed out on how WCS groups work, that means that the loser of this doesn't necessarily get knocked out just yet, but it is an important match for both of these guys, and I'm sure they both would love to make it out to the round robin. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We are getting started in game number 1 on Port Alexander. Down here in the bottom right-hand corner of the map, we got the red Protoss player. His name is ShoWTime. Team Makers, his new team.
An advanced Iron Chain. In the top left, as the blue Protoss for Cascade, it is DnS.
DnS, I know back in the day, like sometime during last year, used to have a little bit of a reputation as being very good at Protoss versus Protoss, right?
Well, there's one of the Ting tournaments, he was able to like 5-1 Neve or something. So that kind of like set in motion as like, okay, maybe this is his year, maybe this is his matchup, right? I wasn't necessarily like I think like the next week or 2 weeks after that, like Neeb slapped them down in reverse. Like, it was like, no, that was not how it was going to go down. But yeah, I think DnS has still kept kind of this
reputation.
Thank you, reputation. That is the word I was trying to think of for being pretty good at PvP. But really, all of his matchups, I think, are rather lined up to each other. So.
Okay, well, I'm sure that he's been practicing a lot of PvP as well, knowing that he has 2 other Protoss players to play in his group, and ShoWTime is one of the toughest ones to get in your group, and especially as your first match. ShoWTime, a very well-renowned Protoss player from Europe, arguably the best European Protoss player. Of course, arguably, there are some other really good ones. But ShoWTime had some magnificent results last year. Some would say it was a little bit disappointing, but I mean, getting a finals showing at WCS Leipzig at the beginning of the year, having a lot of other good showings and making playoffs pretty consistently. ShoWTime is a force to reckon with. So what is DnS going to be doing in this PvP? What is ShoWTime going to be doing as well?
Well, we already said that ShoWTime might be the one to play a little more to the macro sense, just believing that in general he is the better player. And you brought up last year, and yes, it was, I guess, overall a bit disappointing for him, you know, when he started off the year so great, when in 2017 he was also kind of that, you know, one of the powerhouses. It just turns out that Cyril's it was his 2018, so it was kind of hard to be anyone else last year.
It was kind of grand staged by him.
Yeah, exactly. But then ShoWTime has seemed to have just been putting in the hours. I mean, there's one thing you can depend on ShoWTime for. It's like his rigidness, right? Like his work ethic, exactly. And it seems to be really paying off. Everyone's saying that he's looking like a beast. He kind of got to show it in the round of 32 group, but you know, by getting on top. But then I think we're going to continue seeing him getting on top until, like, well, I guess the round robin. You really get on top? Yeah, I guess you could. Yeah, I mean, you can win everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, I am really looking forward to seeing how that goes as well. If ShoWTime can make it to that stage, and I really like what you mentioned about work ethic, because I love watching the ladder, and I love watching how many games everyone's playing, how everyone's doing in MMR. ShoWTime is definitely up there, not only in MMR as being, I think, rank 4 or something on the ladder, but on top of that, he has played close to the most number of games of all the top players on the ladder. He is playing an insane number of games. I do want to note that we do have the openings have already gotten started. It's a Stargate from ShoWTime, but what's most interesting is that it's a Void Ray first, as he is also facing off against a lot of the Stalker aggression. Yeah,
hallucinated Phoenix from the Sentry first. Again, maybe playing more to that macro basic PvP sense, and it barely got that scout in the 3rd gateway in time. Obviously a follow-up Robo too, but he knew that was going to be a sign of some aggression. He also was probably already willing to bet that he would have to defend. So the shield battery's already done. He's making a second one. He was prepared for this, and then he's getting even more prepared because he scouted it. It's under pressure for a while now, and he seems to be doing okay here.
Yep, finally, one of the first Stalkers in these engagements die on DNS's side. That Void Ray going to be on prismatic alignment for another 5 or 6 seconds, but it eventually will fade, and that's when DNS wants to continue poking back and forth. He's already taken off all the shields from that Nexus. There are shield batteries there, so if he really focus fires down that Nexus, there is some potential to heal it back up, buy a bit more time. ShoWTime, maybe waiting for that second Void Ray?
Yeah, he's got to be very conservative here. Trying to keep all of his units alive, as he is the one gaining units a little bit slower paced than DNS. Even though DNS is warping in slowly, by the way, it's still close enough to really be impactful. Actually, now he's got a warp prism, so it's no longer slow.
Yeah, and remember, this is 3 warp gates for DNS versus just 2 warp gates for ShoWTime. But ShoWTime's got to rely on those Void Rays. One Void Ray gets focus fire down. The warp prism micro is pretty damn solid, especially versus the high DPS of those Void Rays. We end up seeing the Stalkers in the back starting to sit a little bit low on energy. There's Stalkers for ShoWTime trying to retreat back to that shield battery, and it looks like DNS is getting forced back. The Warp Prism taking a couple hits here as well.
Yeah, at least the Void Ray made it so all the Stalkers are very, very, very low in health. ShoWTime can retreat back into more shield batteries. He was trying to defend his Nexus, right? Because it's been getting so low. He could also recharge his Nexus if he has to.
The number of Stalkers here for DNS though is high enough that he's able to start getting close to one-shotting some of these Stalkers. The Warp Prism gets so low on hit points, but ShoWTime does not quite manage to snipe it.
Yeah, this is so close. Really great micro from DNS, but then ShoWTime also almost making those correct decisions. If he got the Warp Prism, this would make life so much easier for him, but he can't quite get it. DNS is really still all in with this. If he doesn't get the Nexus, he will be in trouble. And again, that Nexus, it shouldn't go down here. Even with all the shields, this shield battery could recharge it.
An Adept is actually there for ShoWTime. He's going to start pulling that to the front finally. It was sitting behind the mineral, or in that mineral line for the natural expansion. 3 more Stalkers getting warped in. Another Void Rays on the way, but Zombie Cup, I'm a little afraid that ShoWtime's Next is taking so much damage that Void Ray's not going to come out in time.
Yeah, it might happen. Oh, the Warp Prism!
Warp Prism, he doesn't get it again! I don't even know if DnS is baiting with that Warp Prism or what. Keeps putting it so far forward, but he's doing a great job with it.
I think the tides might have turned too much in favor of DnS. He has so many Stalkers compared to what ShoWTime has, and he got the Nexus, so maybe there's a chance to macro out of this. Finally, he's pushed back, but I think it's only temporary as he is warping in always. An Observer even coming out here, getting that high ground vision if he needs it. As I mean, ShoWtime he's got to be close to tapping out.
Yeah.
He's lost it out.
These shield batteries don't really matter too much if you have enough Stalkers to one-shot your opponent's Stalkers. Now we're starting to see the fire get a little bit staggered, but those shield batteries just about out of energy. The Void Ray goes down. The last couple of Stalkers are going to start falling. And ShoWtime getting sniped in game number 1 by our Protoss Master.
To be clear, ShoWtime also, I think, his best matchup is PvP. And that's just like adding on to the insane quality that DnS showed us there. I mean, we've seen that type of setup often enough in PvP, right? One person goes for the Stargate, defensive, macro, the other person goes for the proxy pylon.
Yeah.
And it is a matter of micro, you know? There's the chance that the Void Rays, had they targeted the Warp Prism immediately, maybe that would have been the better call, even though it means the Stalkers had more health. It's a very tough hold, even though I would say that ShoWtime was doing a lot of the correct things for it.
I know, and that's the thing about that kind of PvP where the engagements are lasting for just 2, 3, 4 solid minutes of just back and forth. There are so many individual moments we could pick apart and say, well, what if he had done this? What if he had focus fired down the Warp Prism? Or what if he had focused down this other Stalker or not focused down the Warp Prism? And ultimately, we have to say that DnS gradually started just taking better micro trades. His Warp Prism micro is so good there. I want to highlight how difficult it is when there is a Void Ray prismatically aligned and Stalkers attacking your Stalkers, and you're still able to pick up the Stalkers and save so many of them. I am so impressed with that micro from DnS.
The most impressive thing that you can only, like you can try and be good with it, but it's also a little bit of luck, is that Warp Prism constantly got down to like the last bit of health. That's all of the Stalker shots going on it and not quite killing it. So it really was great at tanking. A Warp Prism tanked a ton of shots.
Exactly, and that's why I was wondering, you know, is DnS doing this on purpose? Is he baiting shots because he realizes how many Stalkers there actually are there? Or is this just he's barely getting saved? Because either way, that really helped out, intentional or not.
Yeah, that was really sick there. DnS might be looking for more opportunities to be the aggressive one on ShoWtime, but since it is PvP, I would imagine that ShoWtime also is willing to be like, nah, I'll show you how it's really done, man.
Yeah, of course, that was ultimately, when we look at it, kind of an all-in, a very, very aggressive attack. I mean, there was no expansion or anything. He had to get some damage done. There was no intention of expanding immediately after that. So that is one style of PvP that we can see play out. We absolutely could just see not necessarily super fast expansions. That sometimes happens in PvP, but it's never a guarantee. But I really want to know, how does game number 2 go? How does ShoWtime react? Is he going to play a little more safe? Is he going to play a little bit more standard or something?
I mean, the ability chose, right, with the safety, hallucination, sentry first, so you can get the scout down, and the Stargate can help with the Void Ray. Like, it's not, it doesn't feel like it's bad build. Maybe not the most ideal to go up against that. Maybe Immortals, right, would have been the easier choice, but we'll see. Maybe that does deter him from here on out not to go for that Stargate, and that would be great for DnS. He's already in ShoWtime's head.
Indeed. We're going on to new repugnancy for game number 2 as we start down here in the bottom left-hand corner of the map. Top of the red Protoss player, the #1 seed in the group. He is ShoWtime. Team Makers.
In the top right, as the blue Protoss for Cascade, it is DnS.
I want to give due credit to DnS and say that I think he absolutely, as we saw in that last game, he's capable of beating ShoWtime. But at the same time, I think a lot of people's predictions would have still been, well, ShoWtime makes it out in the winner's match just because it's ShoWtime. He's so good. There's so much respect around him. It's not necessarily the same level of surprise as like Vindicta beats Neve or something, or someone beats Cyril, but I would say it still kind of blows this group maybe a little bit wider open if DnS is able to just immediately take ShoWtime down to the lower bracket match.
I agree with you. It'd still be a surprise, even though we know DnS's PvP is great. And in general, he's been a player that's been waiting for that breakout performance. It seems like it was just a matter of time. That would be great for him, but it would be a shock. And it would be also a shock for maybe ShoWTime, who, I mean, he's in the same boat as DnS. He probably looked at this group and said, oh, cracks a lot of PvP.
Yeah.
Right? So to be ultimately knocked out to it is, you know, it's a nasty feeling. So far, standard openers. ShoWTime, a little bit more about scouting, I guess, earlier on, but that's neither here nor there, really. Both people throwing down 2 pylons in the main, not like our NA groups.
Yeah. I guess, like, on the note of early probe scouts and stuff, there's occasionally some nice locations, I think, on this map for a couple of cannon rushes and stuff. But, like you said, neither here nor there. We're seeing double gate from both these guys. We're seeing Stalker Sentry from ShoWTime, the kind of more normal, safer style to go for as an opening. Whereas double Adept, you're looking to try and get some scouting information, maybe get a little bit of damage if you're lucky and they don't quite... Actually, if they don't quite wall with a shield battery, sometimes they actually can just be game ending if you get enough damage done.
Interesting to get a Zealot afterwards, unless he's faking it. No, I mean, but
it might be there because Stalker Sentry doesn't really kill a pylon that quickly, and he just in case they do let the pylon finish, maybe.
That's a decent point, but obviously just change over into a Stalker. The Sentry First really has become one of the more popular builds with how the meta changes constantly, it feels, for PvP. And it usually does go into that safer path, but in this case we do have a third gateway, and it's DnS with the Adept openers going into that Stargate, very common follow-up when we see that. He does have 2 Stalkers ready to intercept a possible Phoenix hallucination. That's what could happen.
Yeah, by the way, the Adepts are making their way all along the south side, but then a probe for ShoWTime goes all the way up to the north side, throws down a proxy pylon. Interested to see what that's going to be used for, if that's just for gradual, eventual aggression, or if ShoWTime's looking to add on a bunch more gateway units and really pile on that power.
So DnS didn't, I mean, he's actually going forward with this 4 group of units. It is more than what ShoWTime has. The Sentry wouldn't be able to help out too much with its energy already being used for the Phoenix, but ShoWTime, it's not really about the defensive. He is going for the attack. He's getting a Nexus while he's doing this, so this is DnS kind of totally in the dark. He sees the Nexus, doesn't see the pylon. He's about to be attacked, and he's not at all prepared for it.
Yeah, he does have enough energy for a recall. He's actually got enough energy to chrono boost and then still recall. The Oracle goes straight over the pylon, and now the pylon for DnS is... Oh no, he's gonna potentially lose that. He does end up recalling his units back in time.
I was gonna say, that was a little scary right there.
I mean, this is still kind of a scary spot right now, as Adepts don't quite do as well in these Stalker versus Stalker fights.
Yeah, eventually you can actually tear him down. Which is exactly what's happening here on the front lines, being focus fired, ShoWTime continuing to warp in. He was also getting a lot of defense when he thought maybe there was a possible like base trade, literally natural nexus for natural nexus. But now that he realized that wasn't the case, he cancels them and commits full force to the micro here on the front lines, but they both are still building probes.
ShoWTime gonna try and set off that stasis trap with the probe, but the probe gonna get taken out before he can set it off. A nice little micro tactic there, or attempt there from ShoWTime. One nice thing though is just keeping that Oracle at home with gateway aggression. It's honestly not something I get to see too often. Usually it's like the gateway units move across the map and you say, cool, I've been able to do that, and then the Oracle comes in from behind and backstabs a bunch of your pros. But I'm impressed that ShoWTime's been able to put on enough pressure, and DnS felt like he had to keep that Oracle at home to defend.
Yeah, well, now it's coming through here. Notice there's no shield battery in the natural, so that is something the Oracle can get damage done on. But all the Stalkers have returned home. DnS has held, even it was a little bit weird with the finally getting a couple shots.
And both these players got their natural expansions up around the same-ish time. Of course, a little bit of denial of mining time there for by ShoWTime on DnS's natural. But as the pylon gets taken out here for ShoWTime, both these players throw down their robos. Blink coming up, like you said, I think a little bit faster here for DnS.
Well, much faster. It's coming down at all, right?
Actually, wait, yeah, we don't even have a Twilight Council down for ShoWTime yet.
Yeah, exactly. So
no tech.
I mean, we do see that kind of 2 pathways you can take as you get into the mid-game PvP. Eventually, I mean, there's going to be micro decisions made, and micro just showing itself how good it can be from DnS primarily. But eventually, this goes more into like, okay, who's going to do that +2 attack? Usually with the 3rd base, but we're seeing a lot on 2 base too. And does that blink actually become worth it, or does it just kind of pause you along, give you a pause along like the Immortal production, or maybe you're related to the upgrade, which he in fact is.
Yeah, the Immortal production can definitely be pretty important. If you go in, if the game goes into Blink Stalker Disruptor, then the Blinks definitely starts finding some value for sure. So we'll see. I see what you're saying though. Sometimes you can get away without even going for Blink. You just go into the Charge Lot Archon Immortal stuff. But we end up seeing a couple of Adepts trying to make their way out to get some scouting information. DnS is going to catch them with the Blink Stalkers, revealing Blink, by the way. So ShoWTime knows Twilight Council is done, that Blink is finished up. And he's been sending pretty consistent Hallucinating Phoenix with the 3 sentries he got, which is actually quite a few sentries for the scout.
Yeah, well, it was very conservative, you know, like if they, you will not be running out of Hallucinating Phoenix if that's what you're allowed to do. And then in this case, if they weren't Blink Stalkers, you could try and force field them forward and take some better trades. But because they're Blink Stalkers, it's actually DnS showing us the micro trying to take down a sentry. Actually does get a Stalker there and keeps, I believe, all of his Stalkers alive, even if they're injured.
Yeah, exactly. You actually managed to snipe off 2 Stalkers during the entirety of that fight, so really well done and controlled there by DnS. Like you said, keeping the Stalkers alive, they'll regenerate most of those shields.
That's a lot of gameplays.
Yeah, also finishing off that Warp Prism, ShoWTime may be feeling like this is going to be his time to move out soon. Gateway's finishing up here for DnS, and we do have +1 weapons finishing up for both sides at about the same time. Okay, nice. ShoWTime sets off the Stasis Trap nice and early.
I do expect both of them really to go into a 3rd Nexus, but as you know, ShoWTime's getting the Templar Archives right now, and he is being pressured, so we can't just easily send a probe out there. So maybe, but it's like, again, it revolves so much more around this +2, like, I feel like 80% of the time in PvP. DnS is going to keep tabs on the army, though, and say, like, oh, you are going to push me a little bit prematurely. His 3rd Nexus is to the north, so ShoWTime were to go south, that wouldn't really be ideal. And there is ShoWTime's 3rd Nexus.
Oracle immediately scouts that out and actually drives back into the natural. The shield battery is kind of far forward, so the probes have to pull off of mining for a little bit to try and go back to the safety of that shield battery, which is now out of energy. So is the Oracle, though, so ShoWTime going to get away without really taking too many losses there. But Charge is finishing up here for ShoWTime, and we already have Charge finished up for DnS. Is ShoWTime going to make that push out as +2 weapons about more than halfway done now?
That was a Warp Prism that just died. I was like, well, he didn't make an Oracle, it just died there. Yeah, that Warp Prism, nothing going to the north has worked out for ShoWTime, the Adepts, the Warp Prism now. He's going to have to rebuild that. It's 200 minerals, which isn't maybe the most expensive thing, but it is time on that Robo, and clearly he had a plan to actually utilize that somehow, and it's not going to work out. Both are waiting for the 3rd Nexus to finish up, even workers, even tech, but ShoWTime does have that +2 a little bit faster. It's also interesting how they both expanded. DnS knows more about what ShoWTime's doing than ShoWTime does.
I actually really like DnS's position, just not substantially better, but just a little bit better, because I feel like almost everything, like you said, has been tied up. The only difference is I feel like DnS has been getting a lot more of these Zealot weapons a lot sooner than ShoWTime. And now he's going to catch 2 of the Immortals very quickly. Some force fields come down, but the Archons knock those force fields down. The Immortal barely survives, but the 3rd base, I don't think he can save this.
Nah, he was totally out of position. He missed that army completely. Listen, Phoenix missed their 3rd base completely. And DnS takes a very strong fight to start to this fight, as he was up in army supply. Their upgrades had evened out by that point. DnS just playing the stronger game. The Stalkers really did a great job of controlling the map and keeping tabs on what ShoWTime was doing, taking pot shots when they could. And then ShoWTime was blinded more than you would think with his sentries being on high number.
Yep, we end up seeing the Adepts moving forward, sniping up a couple of workers. This is going to give ShoWTime a mild worker advantage, but it's 44 workers to 44 workers. And unfortunately, as much as this is nice for ShoWTime, he's still going to be down that 3rd base, so DnS can just pump out workers 3 at a time, and ShoWTime is not even looking at signs right now of actually making workers.
Yeah. It was still so interesting
that really good damage.
It was, yes. That those Adepts actually did quite a bit. But going back to the 3rd base location, again, he didn't realize where DnS was taking his. It seems like he totally figured this was the default base. Like his Phoenix went directly to it. Where actually you would maybe think this would be the default base, because it's the high ground versus this one, right? He was on the low ground. It's usually, when we look at 3rd bases, we consider that. Now he's taking this high ground one as he realized DnS, in fact, was on a 3rd base this entire time. I think he figured that out, but this is the first time that he scouted it entirely.
Oh, tough spot here for ShoWTime. He's already sitting down 0-1 in this series. He's going to keep making his Archons. He's going to keep getting up that massive army, because this is that point in PvP where even if you are a bit down in maybe some of your economy and stuff, your army is still looking good, and as you get closer and closer to that maxed out point, you can still make a magnificent engagement happen with just really, really good control, really good positioning, and potentially some good micro to focus fire down the right units. He's got a lot of Zealots here. Some more High Templars have not been. Oh my god,
Wow.
actually, that warp in the main is going to be a pain to deal with.
Yeah, it was Immortals being dropped along with a charge that warp in. It's trying to be countered by Archon micro, but then is that too much micro being involved here when the army fight's going down to the right side? Actually, DnS not going to commit to this.
Yeah, DnS did commit most of his Immortals over to that main base engagement, so it seems like even though DnS has a lot of units over at that low ground, he wants to pull back, and he is going to be able to try and move up this ramp. This is a weird angle for DnS to try and move up, though.
It was kind of weird from ShoWTime, too, though, right? Like, actually chasing after that army, it seemed like maybe he was paying attention to the main fight and just let his army get AI'd. Maybe it was on purpose, though. Like, it could be wrong. Just that all of his charge lots were behind his Archons. So I was like, that seemed a little weird.
Man, what's also really big is that +3 weapons is finished up here for DnS, and that means that those Zealots are going to disappear a lot faster. The Archon fire, the Immortals are going to pack even more of a punch. DnS retreats back to his third, regroups, warps in a couple more Archons, and might be able to go again. I don't know that DnS or that ShoWTime will be able to take a fight, especially if he loses a bunch of Zealots like this.
Yeah, ShoWTime being oddly aggressive for the one that's behind an upgrade here. He should have clicked on the army by now and seen, okay, I'm behind in an upgrade. But it might just be desperation, you know? He figures he can't win into a long PvP. I'm afraid he won't be able to win here either, though.
It's a bit of a standoff right now because both these players know that this is a choke point. ShoWTime's going to be the first one to blink, though. He tries to move forward, and the Zealots try charging forward, but they're going into their own death with so many Archons here for DnS. DnS starts taking a massive supply lead, and with the Zealot buffer gone, the Archon buffer gone here for ShoWTime, you end up seeing that DnS is plowing on through. 2-0 for DnS.
Very impressive result there. Should be very proud of that, especially since it's still possible that the winner's match might be a PvP.
Yeah.
I feel really confident. Taking down ShoWTime, even in a matchup that's considered a little bit weirder, is still a feat. And DnS, this might be his chance to really finally shine if he makes it through this group in first.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not even just off the back of that first game, which was clearly a bit more of an all-in one-base attack there from DnS trying to shut down ShoWTime. He was going for an expansion. That second game was just DnS playing really, really well. He got up this Stargate, he got up the Stargate for the Oracle. He did have to defend a little bit against ShoWTime's pressure, but then he was just doing a great job with that. And the Blink Stalker control you were talking about was getting so many nice little free pickoffs, pulling ShoWTime apart, making him feel very defensive, and also shutting down his vision. He did a great job with that and played the macro game.
He probably like halved the amount of Hussein Phoenix there could be because the Force Fields, the Guardian Shields had to be used. And then on top of that, he managed to avoid any of the Phoenix that were around. They didn't scout the third base, they didn't scout the army movement, and that was the biggest thing. Like, they were pretty even up until that army just was suddenly at the third base and ShoWTime wasn't anywhere near it. That was a big difference maker.
Well, with that said, of course, DnS does move on to that winner's match, as we discussed before, and we will see if he's going to be facing off versus a Laser or Hellraiser. That is going to be the next match, by the way. A Laser versus Hellraiser. The Lone Zerg facing off versus his first Protoss in Group C. Find out in just 5 minutes' time who's going to come out on top of that one.